All right, we are live. And every once in a while, I get to sit down with someone who didn't just build a successful company, they created something that became part of our culture. Today's guest co founded Outback Steakhouse, helped scale it to more than 1,450 locations around the world, and created one of the most recognizable appetizers on the planet, the Bloomin' Onion. But what I love about Tim's story is where it started. Raised by a single mom with five siblings, parking cars in Fort Lauderdale, and eventually building a hospitality empire. Today, we're talking about what happened between those 2 points: hospitality, scale, culture, risk, reinvention. And yes, we are absolutely going to talk about that onion. All right, we're back, and I'm Sondra Shannon, CEO of Gatemaster Technology. Before we jump in, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Gatemaster. For more than 30 years, we've helped attractions simplify operations and create better guest experiences through technology. But I've always believed that hospitality is fundamentally human. Technology should remove friction so your people can take better care of your guests. Because today's guests don't remember your software, they remember how you made them feel. And today's guest knows a little something about creating an experience people remember. Before we get started, a quick shout out to everyone listening on the Live with Sondra podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share. Subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Live with Sondra YouTube channel. This is what allows us to keep this type of programming coming and to get great guests like today's guest, Tim. So let's meet Tim. Tim Gannon is the co-founder of Outback Steakhouse, creator of the Bloomin' Onion, and author of Bloomin' Adventures. He helped build Outback into a global restaurant brand with more than 1,450 locations. And apparently, building a restaurant empire wasn't competitive enough because at 42, Tim returned to his passion for polo and went on to win 5 US Open championships before turning 50. I have a lot of questions about that. Now, without further ado, Tim, welcome to Live with Sondra. There you are.
Hi, Sondra. How are you? It's a thrill for me to be here with you.
Thank you for being here with me. I'm really excited to have you, and this is a really fun show for a couple of reasons. One, because I feel like everybody watching has had a bloomin' onion. And that's a
Yes.
that was a really special thing for me because I being in the experience economy, working with attractions, I personally can remember those moments where I've shared that with friends or colleagues, and it was an experience, right?
Yeah, one of the interesting things was writing this book called Bloomin' Adventures, which focuses the cover of the Bloomin' Onion on the cover, allowed me to have conversations with people about how they've shared the Bloomin' Onion. We have sold $1.3 billion in Bloomin' Onions, just in the onion alone, over the 35 years. And it's about 75% of all the people. We do over 100 million customers a year. So out of that group, about 75% of them have experienced the Bloomin' Onion, pedal by pedal.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny. I actually have a friend who used to call me a bloomin' onion because he'd say, I don't understand all the layers you've got. And after talking to you, I realized, what is it, 200 petals? Over 200
Yeah,
petals?
yeah, yeah,
That's wild.
yeah. It's
Maybe
a
I
it's
am
a
a bloomin' onion.
it's a very, very difficult product to make, which is why we never had to copyright it. It was so hard to make that no one really has successfully been able to copy it because we built our kitchen around the manufacturing and making of that onion with a bank of fryers because it takes about 8 fryers to commit to that product, and most restaurants have two, maybe 3 fryers, but not 8.
Wow. Well, I think I saw something you posted the other day about the temperature. The 300, what is it? 300, it's three has to be, was it 350 degrees it has to be? Or 300?
350, 350.
350.
And if it goes down to like 342, you can pick the pedal up and you can feel a little bit of oil in the pedal. That's absolutely wrong. So we gauge those fryers by biothermometers to make sure they're exactly 350 with clean oil.
Wow. That's fascinating. Well, I'm curious, at what point in your life or in your career and maybe we can just start with like how did that adventure begin? Because you've shared a lot of adventures with me even just today that I didn't know about you, which was
Yeah.
really cool. But I think about the beginning of this process for you and creating this, but then also in the beginning of Outback, what at what point did you decide that this was where you wanted to go with your career, but also, at what point did you decide that you were going to create something like this, or did it just happen?
No, it didn't happen. I considered myself, Sondra, a flavorist, someone who understands flavor at its deepest roots. From the flavor of how hot the cayenne pepper is, how many heat loads of BTU factors are in the cayenne, to exacting standards of flavor. I learned a lot about flavor when I was in New Orleans for 10 years, and I studied from all the Creole chefs, the French chefs, and all of the other local chefs there. They're fabulous food, fabulous people that know how to blend flavor. And I also worked for Al Copen with who had Popeyes that makes beautiful fried chicken and buttermilk biscuits. So and I developed a concept for him called Copeland's, and it was all the greatest food of New Orleans under one roof. So that was a lot of fun, and that prepped me to get ready to launch Outback Steakhouse.
And what can you give us a little history on how that came to be? Because I know that you're a co-founder. I mean, was it a group of friends that got together that decided to do this? Were this
Yeah,
people? Okay.
it was two friends of mine that I had known for 20 years prior from the Steak and Ale days. We started together at Steak and Ale, and we kept in touch. And Chris Sullivan and Bob Basham, and it's a fascinating story that Chris um, had followed my career. He knew I was talented, and I knew he was talented. So we just said one day we have to start something and do a concept together. We had always worked for other people, but never for ourselves. So I said, one day, let's start a concept where we can make money with each other, not for someone. So that was when I went to Al Copeland and I explained to Al that I'm going to leave New Orleans, go to Tampa, and start the Outback Steakhouse. He was very upset and he asked me why. And I said, well, I had a previous debt load from a World's Fair project that didn't work. And so I was an entrepreneur and I tried things and some worked, some didn't work. So Al added up all my bills and my debt and said, in also a house, if I wanted to buy a house. And he wrote out a check for $1 million. And he handed me the check. And it was the proudest moment of my life when I ripped it up. I decided that I wanted to make my money with someone, not for someone. I decided it was a very difficult thing to do as I had debt. I had two small children at the time. And to rip up a check for $1 million when it's in your hand and you have that kind of debt load, it was the bravest thing I did. But it was at the point in my life when I decided to be strategic instead of transactional. Instead of like taking a check, paying off my debt, doing that, that's transactional. No, I'm going to bet on the partnership that I can create with all these great recipes. I had the confidence of the recipes in my back pocket. I had 2,000 recipes to be able to make five different concepts. And finding the right partners was it. And when I wrote that story in my book, I gave the book to my partner. He never knew the story that I ripped up a check for $1 million to go work for him. And so that belief, the belief in your partner that this is the guy that's going to, you're together, you're going to get to the promised land. Together, you're going to achieve your dreams. That was the guy, and I believed in it. And when you believe so hard in something, that's what you have to do to make partnerships work, to have each other's back. And now they have their dreams of, they're not polo players, but they're golfers. They have their own beautiful, one of the top 20 golf courses in America, in Tampa, Florida, called Old Memorial. And that's where they hang out with all the great friends that they have in the golf world. So we've all achieved our dreams. All three of us have really done well. But it's the secret of a great partnership, a
Yeah.
partnership that is bonded together and works. They had my back, I had their back. We all stayed in our own lane. That was important.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that resonates with me. I work with a few people in my company that one, I mentioned to you earlier, we were talking a little bit about the founder of the company. He took a risk on me when I was very young, and what I love about what you said is throughout all of our years together, it has always come back to having each other's back and believing in this future that we could create together and helping each other raise belief, right? It sounds like you all did that. And that's really a cool story, and I think a valuable lesson to anybody listening. But also, makes me wonder, at what point in that belief did you know that you had something that you could scale?
Um, we After we opened our first restaurant in Tampa, it didn't start off going out of the block success. It was not successful overnight. We opened up and we called people, invited them to us, and it slowly, and we had all the great menu items, the Bloomin' Onion, and and people started talking about our restaurant. And then we got a great food write up from the St. Pete Times that said, "This is a restaurant designed by three chain restaurant guys, but the chain left off at the door. When you bite into this food, this is not chain food restaurant. This is beautiful gourmet food from the coconut beer battered shrimp to ahi tuna to all the beautiful items on the menu. This is not a chain restaurant." So she was very good. And so we filled up and then we went into like people waiting 2 hours to get into an Outback. I was so like we were all blown away. There were restaurants next to us that were empty, and here we had people in the parking lot waiting to get into the restaurant. It was just it was a miracle.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, and I'm curious because I know as you grew this to 1,450 locations, which is incredible. How did you lose that touch that you had in the beginning? The thing that made it great, the thing that made people wait 2 hours to get into the restaurant without losing that experience? Because I know that's really, especially for the audience that's listening here, attractions, scaling is a big part of what we have to do in order to be successful. And I know that we don't want to lose that original experience that made it great.
Scaling has to be done. We did it. We had a booklet called the Principles and Beliefs, and it was 4 pages. And what it did, it detailed how do we treat our guests, how do we treat our teammates, and how do we treat investors. And each decision we made had to be balanced by all three of those different elements. And so, the guest hospitality was very crucial. We had what was called concentrated service, which is we had for the first time, our servers had only three tables in their station. And so that gave you a feeling that someone's always there for you. You don't have to find your waiter or waitress. So concentrated service was a big part of it. And then for employees, they had a clear path. And the other thing we did was we had a manager partner program where people invested $25,000 to become a general manager. They weren't general managers, they were partners. And
Yeah.
we put their name over the door. And that was the most powerful thing we did, was to have their name written and inscribed over the door. As people walk in, they saw their name, and it was their restaurant. It wasn't our restaurant, it was theirs. And so having a partnership program was critical. And then the economics we had down pat, that we would go into shopping centers without expensive real estate, and we would let the menu be the draw to our customers. So the real estate prices and everything we did was accurate, and we had a very good 25% return on investment, because we had a sales to investment ratio of 2 to 1. And so we kept our economic discipline solid. So we didn't go crazy about buying expensive restaurants and over decorating them. And we kept corporate staff very low.
No, that makes sense. And what was non-negotiable in that process? I mean, I'm assuming hospitality is is a non-negotiable, but was there
Well,
anything that?
ingredients were non-negotiable. There, I
Yes.
expect every ingredient to. I mean, we were the largest user of Reggiano Parmesan in the world. In the
Wow.
world. So we used more Reggiano than anybody else, and we're good friends with all the guys in Italy, in Parma. So we had a very, very strict guideline as to what ingredients we could use in terms of the black Angus steaks and how much aging on the beef. We had exacting standards for every single item that we had on the menu. The croutons were hand painted with 17 spices and baked
Wow.
individually, just the croutons. So we had a kind of a formula that, hey, treat everything special, even if it's a crouton.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think there's a lot of big lessons for attractions that are listening to the show about creating those wow moments. I mean, we talked about how the Bloomin' Onion how in your book people talk about that experience, the shared experiences that they have when sharing that. And actually that's what I thought about when I think when I think about having that going to Outback. In fact, that is actually where the founder of my company and I usually go is to
Yeah.
Outback, the one that's out there in he's out in Oakland,
Oh, yeah.
California. Yeah.
Sure.
And so
Sure.
we would go there. And so I really, when I think about business and where we would go, that's where we would go. But the audience here is attractions. And I think there's something really important about creating those wow moments and recreating them. You said the ingredients were non negotiable.
Right. Yeah. And, as far as how people dine in the restaurant, that was always negotiable. If you wanted to eat at the bar, if you wanted to share a steak, anything, we had an axiom that said no rules, just right. That there weren't any rules for the guest, but the food and everything had to be just right, had to be
Yeah.
perfect. The timing of picking your salad plate up and then your entree comes down, all of the timing had to be flawless.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and I also think that what you created became iconic, right?
It,
And
yeah,
And that's something that I think so many of of the companies that are in this experience and attractions industry, they're trying to find that thing that makes them iconic. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, what makes something iconic instead of just being popular?
extraordinary flavor. Extraordinary flavor, not good flavor, but extraordinary flavor that we called it comeback flavor, that you want to keep coming back for more of whatever you just had. That when
Yeah,
you wake up in the morning, you want to think about the dinner you had, uh, and not forget it as you walk out the restaurant and say, "Oh, that was a good dinner." We want you to wake up in the morning saying, wasn't that an unbelievable dinner we had at Outback last night?
Yeah.
So, creating those moments that become indelible in your brain about what that experience was like and how sharing the food, sharing them, we learned a lot from our franchisees. We had a franchisee in South Korea. He did 110 Outbacks in South Korea.
Wow.
And the Korean size of a Korean is 140 pounds. So we had to take our menu and reconstruct our menu for him so that all the food was shareable. Everything was family platters because our steaks were just too big for a 140-pound guy. So we that he taught us a lot about the joy of shared food and having a shared family experience with food.
Yeah. Well, I also, I know in my business with my partners, my clients, whoever that is, sharing food is like one of the best ways, breaking bread, right?
Yeah,
It's important. It's one of the best ways to meet with people and to spend time together. And it's super important, right?
yeah.
Not just for families, but even in the business world, that's where but
Yeah,
trust is built a lot
it
of
breaks the
times.
ice. You get
Yeah.
6 bankers together and you get a bloomin' onion in front of them and see them fight over a bloomin' onion is fun, it's exciting, and it breaks the ice.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And when you created this, did you know that you were intentionally creating those signature moments for people?
I absolutely did.
I love that.
No bones about it. The first one I made, I said, "This will be one of the greatest appetizers in casual dining. This will make our steakhouse go worldwide." My partners only wanted to do 4 restaurants in Tampa when I joined them, and I wanted to do 400 because I wanted to play polo and I wanted huge success. And I love the idea of having a footprint in my life that I can go around in Denver and say, okay, here's where you go to an Outback in Denver. Here's Oakland, California. Here, when you're in Beijing, you have Tiananmen Square. We're right there in South Korea and Seoul, in Rio de Janeiro. And I love that. I really do. And I love the fact that they're teaching our principles and beliefs of hospitality in Brazil in Portuguese. They translate that into 17 different languages. So having a footprint in life that is a positive footprint,
Yeah.
something that people go, wow,
Yeah.
that experience was great. What you have provided us. I mean, I was just at the Florida Restaurant Convention this morning, and a fellow came up to me and says, I started at Outback when I was 18 years old, and I'm and I met my girlfriend there, and I got married. We've been married all my life, and I was with Outback for 26 years, and I certainly loved every day. So you kind of hear those stories, and it resonates that you did something special, not
Yeah.
for yourself, but for other people. And
Yeah.
that's what I try and tell people. They say, I said, stop thinking about when you're going to sell out or how you cash out. Stop thinking about that. Think about how other people are going to profit from the association they have with you. If you can design a plan, an incentive plan that makes your partners multimillionaires or rich or happy, whatever one of those things you do, that's when you find success. You
Yeah.
stop thinking about yourself and you start thinking about how can I make this guy really successful. That's what I'm trying to do today with my book, is to inspire people about how to build a team, how to find the right partner, um, and how to find success. And I'm doing that and consulting, but I think I have a mission to do that because I have done it. And why not show people how to help them find that key that opens the door they've been looking for.
Yeah, and I mean, that's such a cool story about how this guy worked for Outback all these years, met his wife there, and that's probably just one story. I'm sure the book has all sorts of stories about the kind of impact that you've made on the world. But the thing that I love about your story is just how big of an impact that this idea that you knew would work hat on the world, right? And I think so many people in business or anybody who's creating something, maybe maybe they don't get enough credit for believing that from the very beginning. That resonates with me, you
Yeah.
know?
You know, like when I go to the Florida Restaurant Convention, and you kind of, oh my God, you're with Outback, you're and they have such great comments and great stories. Um, it, people say, don't you get tired of, I know I don't. I don't get tired of recognition. I don't get tired of pats on the back, and I don't get tired of hearing stories about how much people love going to the Outback and what Outback has done for them if
Yeah.
they've worked there or whatever, or just had dinner there or had a Bloomin' Onion there. I love all the stories because it it kind of tells you that you are relevant, and you are relevant. And I'm trying to stay relevant even today, um, with the book and with speaking and trying to tell people about how to check and make sure you got the right partner. Most important thing in life is find the right partner.
Yeah. Well, and I also think, like, when you talk about leadership, having the names of the managers, the general managers, or your partners on the door, and really ensuring the success of the people around you, I think is a huge part of success, right? We don't talk enough about that. That you've got to want it for everybody else too around you,
Absolutely,
and you wanted that.
absolutely. I mean, when Inc. magazine was considering us to be Entrepreneur of the Year. And I think that's probably one of the greatest honors of a businessman is
Yeah.
to be Entrepreneur of the Year from Inc. and Merrill Lynch were the sponsors of that. And they came up to my partner, Chris Sullivan, who was the CEO and kind of the leader of our company, and a great leader, may I add. And they came to him and they said, Chris, we're thinking about honoring you as Entrepreneur of the Year. He said, well, I'll give you um, my feedback. He said, if you want to honor me, you have to honor my two co founders. And if you don't, please skip us. They were blown away by that we would actually he would give up the award by losing the recognition of his two partners. So not only did we win the award, but Chris nominated me to give the acceptance speech that I flew my mother in from Walnut Creek, California, and I flew her to Palm Springs to hear the speech. And can you imagine her raising six children by herself? And here's
Yeah.
the last of six, the one she worried about the most, by the way. And here he is getting Entrepreneur of the Year. We beat out AOL, Callaway Golf, incredible company. It wasn't the best of the restaurants. It was the best of all businesses
Yeah.
combined. And there were 5,000 people that I gave the speech to. And it was a challenging moment, but I loved it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a great moment for you and your mom too.
Yeah.
One that probably made her really proud.
Yes.
Well, you make me want to go back to this part of the story that I really love. Is 42. You also returned to polo, and what I think is really cool about that is, yeah, and why it resonates with me. I was a when I was a student, I was on dance teams, and I always wanted to dance, and I gave that up for life and career, right? And I went back in my late 30s, mostly because I needed to work out, and I didn't like traditional workouts. However, to hear that you went back at 42 and not only went back, but 5 US Open championships before
In
you
a
turned
row,
50.
five
Yeah.
in a row we won. I have to tell you a little bit of my story. I was going to write my book and say, um, don't sit in the dugout. Because when I was in Little League, I was on a baseball team and I wasn't athletic at that point in my life. I didn't have a father, nobody throwing the ball together. My older brother didn't like baseball, so I sat on the bench Do you know how discouraging it is to go to a baseball field with beautiful white baseball outfit, and then to come home with a beautiful white baseball outfit?
Yeah.
No mud on it, no nothing, no sliding into home base, and to be sitting in a dugout. I'll never forget that. I said, "What am I doing here?" So I promised myself later on in my life that I want to be an athlete. I want that chapter of being an athlete to be strong, to resonate, and it was so important to me, and I went for it. I was 42. I wanted to play polo. I've ridden horses a little bit during that time period, but when I had the money, I put a team together. Every year it was a different team, by the way, and we competed all over the world. We were
Wow.
number one in the world, um, and we won in Soto Grande, Spain, the Gold Cup, the Silver Cup. We won the Gold Cup in England and Argentina and America all in the same year. Flying horses on a 747. You know, I was going for it. I mean, I said I want to be number one in the world. I wasn't happy with just the United States, and we got to play with King Charles and Patrick Hermes, all these people, Tommy Lee Jones, Maharaji of Jaipur. I mean,
Yeah.
the people we met through polo was extraordinary, and it was fun. And these are some of Salvatore Ferragamo. These are people that are close friends that I visit all over the world today. And in fact, Tommy Lee Jones, he's in my book, and he helped me find a writer and help me out with some parts of the book. So he was very important, and he's been a great friend. But there are a lot of those guys that really helped me with this book.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I love this. I love this that you went back and did that, and I think so many people. I mean, first of all, I think that there is a lot to be said about you wanted to be an athlete, and I think there's a lot to be said about business and athletics, right? And maybe
Yes,
even some good lessons. And I wonder if like polo did teach you something about pressure that maybe business didn't. Because I know for me, I danced on a stadium tour when I was 19, and I learned a lot during that time dancing for an artist on in their stadium tour, and I learned a lot about pressure during those moments. And so I'm curious, what did that teach you about that? Or
you know, polo is the oldest team sport in the world.
yeah,
2000, it's 2000 years old. Started in Persia, moved to Iran, and moved to India. Then from India went to England to New York. But it's the oldest team sport in the world, and each player on the team has a different role.
yes,
Number one is the goal scorer. Two is offensive playmaker. Three is the quarterback, and four is defense. So what I learned from polo is that each team member has to be good in what they do, and they can't be doing what the other one is supposed to be doing. So staying in your lane is such an important concept in business. When people respect other people's lanes and you know uh, don't try and cloud their way. And the other thing that's important is you got to let people make mistakes. You got to allow that people are nobody's perfect, and when they make a mistake, dust them off, and you know and get them going again.
yeah,
It's and when you do that, when somebody makes a pretty big mistake and they're forgiven, you got a friend forever.
yeah. No, I love this. I love this. I love the idea that the sports and having a team. I love that that is a big part of your success with Outback was having the right partners, having the right team,
Yeah,
right? The same goes for the team that took you all the way to the US Open championships, I'm sure, is having the right team.
right. In one year, we had a team and it wasn't going well. So my partner, the guy on my team, number one player in the world, Adolfo Cambiaso, he said, this team's not going well. I don't think we're going to win this year. I said, no, we have to win. It's our destiny. And so I said, let's change the team. So the night before the Open started, we changed the team, and I took my best friend from is in my book. He introduced me to polo. We parked cars together at Mai Kai. Um, we were tour guides together in Florence, Italy. Lifelong friend. And I said, and he was a polo player. I said, tomorrow you're going to play on the Outback team, and you're going to go win the U.S. Open. And the other thing that this guy did is he brought for the first time this woman, Sunny Hale, who was the top female player in the world, and he put her on the team. So we are the first ones that put a woman on the team and won the U.S. Open with a woman on the team. It's a tough sport. It's very physical, but this girl was tough, and she could
Wow.
ride a horse. She could ride so well. Sunny Hale. It was incredible that they all won the U.S. Open.
Wow.
That was year 2000.
Wow. This is so cool. Well, I this is along the same lines, but I'm just curious, because there are a lot of people watching that are in business that have maybe come to this point in their life. Maybe they're in their 40s, like you were at 42 when you decided to kind of reinvent yourself, go back, be an athlete. What do you think people misunderstand about reinventing themselves in their lifetime? Because I feel like that's something that I really do appreciate about your story, and something that resonates with me. Like, I have found myself doing that before. And
It's about resilience. It's
yeah,
about having a dream and knowing the power of a dream. What
yeah,
is the power of a dream? The dream, if you dream it here and you have it here in your mind, it can happen. If you don't dream it, it will never happen. You will lay in your mediocrity for the rest of your life unless you start dreaming. Make it happen in your mind, then start dreaming about how to put it together and how to make it happen. And don't give up. We at Outback we worked 100 hours a week. I mean, it was incredible. The restaurant business incredibly difficult work, long hours. You're open, 7 nights a week and 7 days a week. So it's incredibly demanding, especially when you're building. We were building 160 restaurants a year,
yeah,
new restaurants. It was an incredible growth cycle that we had under our belt, and just to coordinate them, I used to try to go to every opening, and then we started having 5 or 6 openings on the same day. I says, no matter how many private jets we have, I'm not going to get to 5 openings on the same day in Topeka, Kansas, and in Fargo, North Dakota. So, but growth is for me. Growth was so exciting. I loved it. It didn't intimidate me, and I always dreamed about it. I always dreamed of being in a company that's hiring. We're always hiring. We're looking for talent, looking for people. Yes, we have a spot for you. Yes, a nephew needs a job here. Sure, we can get you going. And I love that. I love, being a person that can offer someone a career, um,
yeah.
and get them going, especially if they're a little bit lost.
Well, did anybody ever say like, "Hey, you're doing too much," or I know that's something like for me, even with this show, I started this show about 6 years ago, well, 5 or 6 years ago. And as CEO of my company, a lot of people would say, "Well, are you really going to become a podcaster too?" Things of that nature. And I'm just curious, like at that point, you were scaling and you were growing. What would you say to those people that said it's too much or you're doing too much? I know I'm asking. Listen. I might be asking for the audience, but I think I'm asking for myself because I get that quite often.
Well, I remember my mother asked me, when I was playing polo so much all over the world, and she said, "Let me know when you've had enough polo. Let me know." And she said, "How many games do you need to play in your lifetime?"
Yeah,
And I looked at her and I says, "There's no answer to that." I said, "Because I I will stop playing polo when I have achieved every goal." And when I was the last polo game I did was in Argentina. I played with my son in front of 35,000 people.
Wow.
and I scored the most goals during that game, and we won the Masters Cup. We're in the polo history in Buenos Aires in the museum there, and I said that's it. That's when I won with my son, and I won that Masters Cup in Argentina. And there's only about 12 Americans that have ever played on that field. It's really where the greatest of the great play. There are no so so that was a huge honor. But I knew I said now I can only tarnish my career as a professional polo player. I still went on and played exhibition matches with King Charles and in different matches all over the world just for exhibition and charity. But as far as competition, where somebody could say we beat the Outback team, I never wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
So I hung up my spurs on the competitive side at that in Palermo in 2008, I think it was 2007. When I played, but what a joy to play with your son.
Yeah.
He was in his mid 20s.
Wow, that's such a cool story. I mean, I know we're bumping up against time, and I have a few more things I want to. I have a lot of things I want to ask you, but I think we already talked about this. If we don't get through all the questions, it just means you got to come back on the show.
I'd
But
love to.
thank you, and I'd love to have you. But before I let you go, I do want to make sure that our audience one knows about your book and where they can get a hold of that. And and also, why did you decide to tell your story?
Um, you know, it, I think we all in life are looking to have a footprint in life and to let people know this is my, I always cherish the people that can sing Bocelli, Carly Simon, all these people that can sing. Their songs are going to live forever. And people, and I thought about that. I says, well, I can't sing. I was kicked out of the choir in sixth grade, so I can't sing a lick. I can't remember the lyrics to any songs, but I can write a book. And that book will live on and it will continue to tell the story of there once was a boy that had dreams of playing polo and
Yeah.
he achieved those dreams. There once was a boy. So, so yeah, that that's really why I wrote the book. And you can find it. The easiest way is outbacktim.com is my website, which talks a lot about also the consulting and and speeches. Anybody who's looking for a speaker at their company or event planners or whatever. So outbacktim.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Tim, for being here. This has been a lovely show. I've enjoyed speaking to you so much and getting to know you as we were preparing for the show. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next time I'm in Florida. We'll definitely have to go to an Outback, maybe get a Bloomin' Onion.
I will show you how we make it. I will take you in the
I would love
kitchen
that.
and show you how we cut the onion, how we bread it, and I will, and then I'll give you some of the seasoning that you can take with you that you can spread on anything you like. It works well on grilled fish or steaks or whatever. And I'll give you 5 pounds of my own seasoning, private label seasoning.
I love that. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for
You're
being
welcome.
here. And hey, I'm taking you up on that.
Yes,
So, all right,
I'm your
Tim. Well,
I'm your chef.
thank you, Chef Tim. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, hey, appreciate you sharing so much wisdom today with this audience and so much about I didn't I if I can be just human here, I knew that what you had accomplished was great. And I knew that you had a so many stories to tell. But the things that I didn't expect from this show was how much you talked about the belief that you had in what you were creating and where you were going to go and how you didn't give up, and it's just super inspiring to me. So super grateful to have had this time with you today, and I really appreciate you being here.
Sondra, the pleasure is mine.
Thank you, Tim. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right, well, that was a pretty cool show for me, and hopefully for all of you. Um, I didn't expect the show to be as much about that belief, the partnership, and all of the things that you need to just create like a big impact in the world. And so I hope that's maybe something that you heard from this this show today. And all of that starts with somebody willing to do the work, take the risk, to understand people, to create something different, and then to keep getting better long after you've made it happen. I think that's a real lesson for all of us here today. And if you don't you don't yeah, this was a pretty inspiring show. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'd like to thank Gate Master once again. We've spent more than 30 years working with attractions around the world, and today's conversation definitely reinforces something that I deeply believe, and that is that scale doesn't create a great experience. It tests whether or not you actually can build one. Whether you are serving your guest one location or at 1,000, the fundamentals still matter. Great operations, great people, great hospitality, and memorable moments people want to experience over and over again. Technology can always help you scale those things, but it can never replace those things. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today live. Special shout out to our podcast listeners. And if you enjoyed today's conversation or you enjoyed episodes like today, please like and subscribe to the new Live with Sondra YouTube channel. We're trying to build a community there so we can keep bringing you these next chapters of what's going to happen with Live with Sondra. All these great guests like Tim who are sharing their wisdom on this show and helping us do better and continue to have belief in what's happening in the future of business, technology, hospitality, attractions, the experience economy. I'm Sondra, and this is Live with Sondra.